joined by my old buddy, Evan Lazar. You already know who he is, the extraordinaire, the man who made all this possible. Today, we are going to
Way
be
too much praise.
Not nearly enough praise, buddy. You're too humble. But today, I asked for your help breaking down some Eagles tape because, quite frankly, this Eagles offense scares the dickens out of me a little bit. So much they can do, run game, pass game. So we are going to be breaking down some film and seeing how the Patriots could potentially put a cap or at least slow down this Eagles offense. Evan, what are your takes based on your film study? And however you want to lead us into the first clip, you're starting us off.
Yeah, well, I think that there's a ton of worry about with the Eagles offense, but I think the main thing that I came up with when I was watching them is that, you want to keep as many guys out of conflict as you possibly can with this offense. I think that's the main thing that you see with them is that they have so much window dressing. They have so much with their option package that it just is a ton to decipher post snap. And I think the biggest thing that you would like to do ideally is essentially keep as many guys out of that brain pretzel twister that they put you in and simplify it as much as you possibly can. And then I think the main thing that you also have to look at is, how can you go about putting some pressure on Jalen Hurts without losing contain? Because if he's just allowed to sit back there and make reads off of read option or RPO, and then obviously make reads off of their full field stuff, then he's going to pick you apart. So I think that that's the main balancing act for the Patriots in this game is how can they go about pressuring the quarterback while also respecting the fact that Jalen Hurts can run with the football like he can.
So, you mentioned the RPO package. Let's start off with which one do you want to start with? Because I know you got a lot of options for how they could potentially slow this down. Because again, like the big things you're worried about, obviously the inside zone, like that's the bread and butter where Hurts can also pull it himself. You got the slants from A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, sometimes even Devontae Smith. So which one do you want to start us off with in terms of what they can use to try to slow this game?
Yeah, so here, let me my computer decided to crap out right before we hit record. So, all right. So here's if you put me on there. I think the biggest thing is that you see with them, they love two different types of concepts that I see often out of them in RPO, right? One of them is just like a slant and a flat by the tight end. And I think one of the things that's unique about them, Taylor, that isn't necessarily as prevalent in a lot of college offenses is that they'll run RPOs to the strong side of the formation or the tight end side. A lot of college teams read the weak side of the formation. So they're down here with these two receivers, right? But the Eagles, they'll run it into the strong side of the formation as well, which I think puts a lot of stress on the defense because you usually have to account for the tight end. And there's just a lot more run personnel over here, of course. So you're thinking that this is going to be hit weak side most of the time, but they like to run it strong. So they like to run this little, slant flat. And then they also, the flat with the tight end. And sometimes they'll, not to get too complicated, but I think we see this in one of the other examples. They'll run a tight end in motion, right? Like they'll slide him across and then form the slant flat by motioning him across instead, which is also really tricky for the defense. But this one in particular is just a glance route, right? The 5-step slant to A.J. Brown here at the top of the screen with an RPO attached to it inside zone. So I think the biggest thing that I love about how the Commanders approached it, I thought the Commanders had a lot of really good success against them. They lost some reps, but they won quite a few as well. So the Commanders are going to show a too high safety shell initially. But what they're going to do is they're going to have this tight end here. He's going to end up walking down at the right before the snap at the line of scrimmage and rotate down. And when he rotates down, I think, as we kind of roll this, what's cool about it is he's taking away two things essentially at the same time. So he's going to have the end here by this safety kind of taking the C gap or taking the edge. It allows the end to play the inside gap, right? So that helps free up this defensive tackle here for a one-on-one. against the guard. So you are able to kind of get this double team here and take that inside gap for the inside run, and then allows this guy to go one-on-one. And then what's going to happen is this safety rotating down, he's going to be the force, right? He's going to set the edge of the defense. What I like about this for two reasons is, one, it's a really athletic player, right? So if Hurts carries it and takes it around the corner on the read option part of this play, then you have a safety who you probably really like in terms of his tackling ability too. He's going to have that ability to set the edge of the defense. So if you're the Patriots, like let's think of like Kyle Duggar being in that role, for example, right? So you have somebody that's athletic, that can tackle, that can take on a hit, take on a block. And the other thing that I really like about it, and we've talked about this a lot, Taylor, already, this is man-to-man, right? So you have man-to-man here at the bottom. This safety here is going to rotate into the middle of the field, and you have man-to-man up top. But what this safety is going to do, is, along with setting the edge of the defense, is he's also going to take the first window away from A.J. Brown here at the top of the screen. So as we roll it a little bit, what you're going to see is he's going to come down at the snap, and now Hurts can't throw this first window, right? Because there's a safety right in his way. And then he also has this safety, if he wants to keep it and go, this safety's out here there. So they have this off coverage there at the top of the screen, but the corner doesn't have to worry about the first window. So he doesn't have to worry about giving up the quick throw underneath. So he can just play a vertical, or he can play, obviously, a deeper slant. And then I also mentioned that inside gap from this defensive end. So this becomes the inside gap here, which allows him to take on the double team. Watch this interior lineman. He's just going to get this one-on-one, and he's just going to go right around the left guard, because he knows that the left guard's blocking inside zone. So he's anticipating it, and he's just able to go right around it. So I just really like the way that they use that safety, essentially to unlock like the entire front, just by putting that safety on the edge, to have him be the force player, also having him in that first window to the slant, allows the interior rushers to go and tee off, and then, of course, makes Hurts hold the football. So that's what I'm looking at when I talk about man-to-man. Like, I feel like when we talk about man, a lot of people just are like, oh, God, one-on-one on the outside. Yeah, but it's with parameters, right? Like, he knows that he's got that safety in the first window in the slant, and he also knows that he's got this deep safety here playing the post, right? So, like, what's he really thinking about? He's thinking about a go, and he's thinking about, like, a skinny post or a glance route. And this time he gets the glance. It's actually deflected at the line of scrimmage. But even if it's not, the corner's in really good shape to play it anyways. So that's sort of how I look at this one in particular. And we're going to see another one from the Commanders where they do something similar. But I think that that's really a well done game plan here to kind of allow them to go after Hurts a little bit in the mesh point, but also cover all the gaps and cover that first window throw.
And I love how you mentioned it takes away different things at once, because obviously, one, you got to get some kind of numbers advantage up front. Yeah. Because if you're just going one-on-one, it's going to be a rough day. Obviously, the Patriots, with their scheme, they like to put a lot of that responsibility on their defensive front. But we've also seen against teams like the Ravens, where that's a really tough thing to ask consistently. And I've been thinking, this is what's been driving me crazy about A.J. Brown, is you play off coverage and you get these slant routes where he's so good. I'm not sure if that's him. Yeah, it is him right there.
Yeah.
And when you get to take away that first read, it gives the cornerback a little extra time to get in position, whereas if Hurts can just drop back, throw it on time, with A.J. Brown's frame, his hands, that's going to be an easy pitch and catch when it really is just, all right, off coverage, we're just throwing. But taking away that read, either it's going to slow him down, or like you said, here, pass gets deflected, but it gives the cornerback that extra tick to get back in the window. I love that. I know you got another clip from this Commanders game, the curl flat. Tell us about that one as well.
Yeah, so this one is even – I think the first one I like maybe the most, but I love this one too. So this one, what's really cool about it is that this is the same safety. It's Bobby McCain, right? Veteran safety for the Commanders. And this time, remember we mentioned that curl flat, right? They love to just hit the flat, and then they'll run a little curl, or sometimes it's a slant. But that's what they love running to this side of the formation, this two-receiver side. And what they're going to do this time is Bobby McCain here, this safety, is just going to rotate right into the curl window, right? So he's just going to take it away. And again, he's covering two things at once again, because he's also a secondary force player to a read option outside run. And then you have this defender here at the bottom of the screen. He's going to be man coverage on, I think that's actually Zach Pascal, a receiver in that, kind of detached sort of stance. And they're just going to have a defender again off coverage here on Smith. So if he runs that deeper slant or he runs a go or something like that, you have that advantage there. But you don't have to worry about the quick hitter because you have Bobby McCain rotating into the curl window. So he's just going to take that away. And then also remember, with Bobby McCain taking the edge, what the defensive end is just, this defensive end right here is just free to just crash, right? And he just lays a huge hit on Jalen Hurts. So to me, like, this is the best way to go about it, just because you're presenting answers to pretty much everything the RPO can help, can hit you with, while allowing the defenders in the box here, they're not worried about the pass, right? Like I mentioned earlier, that was the biggest thing for me, is you want to keep guys out of conflict as much as possible. And really the only player that's in conflict on this play is maybe the safety, right? Because he's kind of playing the edge and he's playing the initial pass play. But at the same time, like, if you're taking one guy instead of multiple guys being in conflict, I think you're doing your job, and basically you're putting one of your headiest players and one of your better players on defense, and like a Adrian Phillips or a Kyle Duggar, like one of those guys, they can read through this kind of stuff. Like, they'll be able to figure it out. And again, what I also really like about it is that it allows that end to just crash down and just go free to the quarterback and lay the wood on Jalen Hurts. So he's not just sitting there with all the time in the world to kind of string out this RPO and give the Eagles all sorts of options. You're kind of forcing their hand a little bit to make a quick decision here.
And I love this. Is definitely something the Patriots are going to mix in, because we know how much they like disguises, how they'll show it's either too high and they rotate down. Sometimes they'll have one guy who's down and they'll just rotate which safety's actually being that man. And here against a guy like Jalen Hurts, especially with these reads, like, you want to speed up his process. You want to have something else that he's got to think about. One thing, and I'm curious whether or not the Patriots are actually going to do, because they're typically, like, we know they've had their history with, like, the couple years, especially under Flores, where there was a lot of cover zero, and they really like to be the aggressors when they had all the continuity on defense, and it felt like they were kind of being more, again, aggressive. But the past couple years, it's felt more like they're going to be the kind of defense. It's like, all right, we're just going to be fundamentally sound, or we're not really going to use the blitzes. We're really just going to kind of stick to our gap, have one guy, like I know against the Ravens, for example. Or I think Justin Fields with the Bears, there was a play where Anthony Jennings, like, he made a good play on his own read keeper and he got Fields down. But it's one of those things where when you think about it, you'd maybe rather have the front be more aggressive and have something, maybe the linebackers be more involved. I know your next play is a little something to do with that, so I want to hear your take there.
Yeah, so the next one is basically just a straight scrape exchange, right, from the Giants here. But again, they have this man-to-man up top, and all they're going to do here is this end is just going to crash, and then the linebacker is going to loop around, and they're just going to exchange assignments. So typically, you would obviously see the linebacker, he would take the B gap here from off the ball in the bubble, and then the end would set the edge of the defense. But instead on this one, they're just going to crash, and they're going to have the linebacker kind of kick out, right, to take the edge. And what ends up happening here is, as this linebacker executes this scrape exchange, he sees that Hurts is holding the football and reads run, and he just takes a shot at him, right? So again, you see those off coverage with this little slant flat combination, like we've been talking about it. This is something that they run often, but they're able to actually force this incompletion. Like, this should probably be completed because of the off coverage. But because Hurts is under pressure, it's not a great throw. Right. So the other thing, too, with all these clips that I really like I think the Giants are a little close here, but for the most part, a lot of these clips, they're avoiding the picks, right? That's another big thing that the Eagles did a lot of. Like if we go back to the Commanders examples, you see how they're at different levels of the defense, right? So they're not going to get picked off by these slant flat combinations. That's another huge thing that you worry about with these Eagles plays, slant flat, curl flat, whatever the case may be. You worry about the rubs and the defenders running into each other, but they're able to avoid that by being at different levels. And then the pressure with the kind of twist or scrape exchange there on the right-hand side, that's like my whole thing is just you can't try to sit back and read and react against this team because they have so much window dressing. There's so much optionality to their offense that you're just never going to be right. And you're always going to be chasing yourself if you're just trying to sit back in like a cover 3 or a quarter zone and just read it out. Like it's just going to take you in a blender. And what I like about all 3 of these clips is that the defense is taking it to the offense, right? They're dictating, this is what you're going to be doing. This is where our guys are at. The quarterback's going to be under pressure. And there's not as much of a conflict in the defense of, all right, I got, cover 3 responsibility. I'm a linebacker. I have the middle hook, but I also have the B gap. And like, how do I decipher in a read option which way I'm supposed to go? These guys up top in man coverage, they're playing pass. That they have pass responsibilities. These guys in the box, they're playing run. They have run responsibilities, and that's it. There's no other, kind of conflict or decision, really, post-snap decision for the defense to make.
And I've been wondering how exactly they're going to deal with those types of concepts because anytime you see the back to that 2 receiver side, it's a pretty good bet that they're going to run some kind of slants concept. And that reminded me last year of a lot of things about this offense. Reminded me of the Bengals because you got the 2 basically number 1 receivers. You got the spread offense. They like a lot of RPOs. And like the Bengals, they like those slant concepts. And what the Pats did, actually this reminds me, there was one play, or at least a couple I remember, where it was kind of similar. They would blitz Miles Bryant off the slot and then have a safety come down. It seemed like they were on very high alert for those quick in-breaking routes off those RPOs. So you'd see either Miles Bryant, depending on what coverage they were in, but just in underneath zones, he would either like look over and see what was coming inside with somebody coming back down. They would try cover 2, where Miles Bryant's mindful of, all right, I might have to break in on this inside route from the slot. And then you see the outside guy in a cloud coverage, but it's also like man when it's that fast where you're just trying to suffocate the slant routes. I'm curious what you think, because you don't necessarily want to create these easy pitch and catch scenarios in off coverage, again, against a guy like A.J. Brown, where he's so physical that with his frame, you're not really going to affect the catch point. Are you willing to concede those and just say like, hey, it's not maybe it's a first down, but it's not, an explosive gain as long as you bring him down quickly? Or would you say, hey, I would like to see some press coverage and maybe they play to the levels because the Patriots are really good at that and not just having 2 guys stacked on the line of scrimmage where they can get picked off. Do you think we'll see some press coverage? Or do you think it's really going to be what the Giants did in this game where it was mostly like, all right, we're going to give you like 7 yards of cushion and we're just going to crash down and try to make sure that you're not getting explosives out of short plays?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think we're going to see a ton of press. Like, I don't love what the Giants do here because of what you're explaining right now. Like, this should be completed, like I said, if there's not pressure on the quarterback. Now, they pressure the quarterback, so I guess it doesn't make a difference. But that's why I love the Commanders clip so much because, like, you can play off coverage in this clip because this defender, the safety, is taking away those quick slants, right? So that's what I think is the best thing to do because, as you mentioned on Twitter, which I think is spot on, or X or whatever the heck we're calling it now.
Twix.
they're so good at the go balls, right? And A.J. Brown kills teams on just running verticals. So if you press him at the line of scrimmage and they have a go ball, and that's going to be a long afternoon. There's going to be a lot of big plays, right? So I like playing off coverage because it allows the corner some time to react to whatever Brown is doing. And he's a big physical specimen, but I don't think, for example, if it's Christian Gonzalez, I don't think Christian Gonzalez is going to get run by A.J. Brown, right? Like, I think he can keep up in the foot race. So if you give him this off coverage and allow him to just kind of sit on those deeper routes, whether it's like a glance or it's a vertical, then I think you're in much better shape. Now you need this defender here. Like you need the robber, right? To be rotating into this window. But that's what I would do, or try to do at least, is take away those downfield throws by making him go second window with it. And then hoping that the corner can then break on the ball, with whatever footwork, T-step, whatever, at the top of his off coverage drop. And that way there you can really cover both and not force the corners to get up and press them, especially because like what we saw in a couple of these clips, like they'll use like a lot of these condensed alignments, or they'll use splits, like stack alignments, right? And like if you're stacked like this or they're condensed like that, like it's hard to play press because you're going to get picked. Yeah. So by playing off and then rotating this defender in, then it allows them to play a little bit off, but it also allows them to man up on the receivers. So that's what I like the most when I watch them. I think the biggest thing to me too, like other than all the RPO stuff, just from a big picture standpoint, I would be really weary of them just stringing together these 10, 12, 14, 15 play drives where there's just so many first downs and they just don't get into third and long. And yeah, maybe on first down by playing man, you might give up a bomb here and there, but you're going to get them off the field a lot quicker, or more often, I should say, if you have that ability to take away, first and 10 being a 7-yard gain every single time you're out there.
All right, so I definitely feel a little bit better about the RPO game, thanks to you. And like you say, a lot of the time, like my mentality, and that's why I've been fighting on this all week, because my mentality is, and I think Belichick would agree for the most part, that you take away the explosive plays first. And for the most part, that's also kind of a Staley mindset, and that this is the kind of team where that kind of philosophy can bite you in the butt, because at some point you got to play football and you got to be aggressive to some point. And there are a lot of offenses, especially with younger quarterbacks, where if you say, hey, string together a 10-play drive, they can't do that. They're not patient enough, and they're not going to. We've seen the Eagles, especially in like the 4-minute drill, time and time again. They've got a great offensive line. They've got a diverse running game that can do whatever they want. They've also got good receivers and a dual-threat quarterback who's very smart and very poised. So you don't want to put them in position to do that because they're playing in their wheelhouse. They'll take the bombs. They'll take the explosive plays. But at the same time, you're taking them out of their comfort zone by making an effort to dictate and say, hey, we're not just going to let you eat the clock just because we know you can. We've got to try to make a stand at some point. Covered the RPOs. Next, I'm going to touch on some things that I saw in the QB run game. Hurts as a scrambler, things like that. But first, let's kick it over to our pals at Fanduel. Pay those bills, Amit.
Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed. That's guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join Fanduel. It absolutely is. The app is easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston. Kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, so we've covered the RPO game, the passes, the run game, how the Patriots can get things in their favor. I'm going to take a look at some clips for some kind of popular things that you'll see from this Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts, specifically as a runner for the first couple, how teams have had success defending it, and some examples of the Patriots doing something similar. And then I want to know what your thoughts are on the clips I bring up and if you think there are any alternative strategies they can use. So let me share my screen. All right, so first off, this is just still frame right here. This is a formation where I think the Patriots are going to have to be on high alert for a QB run. Because anytime you see Dallas Goedert as the number 3 in the slot, it usually means one of two things. Either the Eagles are going to have a QB run dialed up, or it's going to come out of his hands pretty quickly. So here specifically, we're going to see a QB draw, and it's really hard, especially because a lot of the time they'll run this draw from empty. Here, you see the running back is in the backfield and is actually going to act as a lead blocker. Now, the Bears up front, you're going to see the tackle over the right guard. He's going to play this smart. He's not going to rush upfield quickly. I think he shows good awareness here, understanding, all right, there's no one attached to the line of scrimmage. Again, it's either quick pass where I need to get my hands up quickly, or Hurts is going to tuck this thing and run. And the most common one of these you're going to see is either some kind of inside draw, specifically for the QB draw, just they try to get you upfield so Hurts can run it right down your throat. Had a lot of success with that, especially if you watch the Super Bowl, you'll see that. But here, like I said, this defensive end is going to show good awareness and not rush upfield, kind of stay home. And this defensive end is actually going to crash inside because the scariest thing with Hurts is him running right down your throat in the middle. You don't want that because he's hard to tackle and he's fast. He's good enough to shake linebackers. So you're going to see on this play. See the crash inside here. And then you see this guy is going to stay patient. He's looking at Hurts, understands that the run might be coming. Patient with it, waits. Gives the defense a chance to rally. One more time. Crash inside. Stay patient with it. Find the quarterback. He doesn't get to him himself, but it gives the defense a chance to rally. Now, obviously, a defensive tackle on his own is going to be a mismatch against Hurts, but the point is you want to create opportunities where he's not just going to be able to take the easy run right down the middle. We actually saw something similar from the Bills last year. It's almost the exact same formation. You have the 3-by-1 with the tight end detached and one back in the backfield. This is one where you're going to see Devon Gottschall, big boy over the center. Similar approach. I'm not sure if this was film study or what exactly happened, but instead of rushing upfield again, takes a more conservative approach, maybe understanding that this was going to be a run. I'm not in the meetings. I don't know for sure. And then you're also going to see Dietrich Wise kind of gets a little jumpy, or he gets uplifted a little bit here, but does a good job regaining his balance. And Anthony Jennings also shows good play recognition, doesn't rush upfield, sees that something's up and comes back inside. I'm going to run it through one time. You see Gottschall, he's got his hand in. He's not committing. In good position to disengage. He's able to get into the other gap. Jennings does a good job looping inside. And like I said, Dietrich Wise initially gets blown off the ball a little bit, but recovers like the veteran he is, manages to get that inside, and brings Josh Allen down for a stop. Now, what are your thoughts on this specific design for the Eagles when they run it? Anything else you've seen? And if you think this is a tactic that the Patriots could use, or if there's an alternative where, like you said, I know you're preaching aggressiveness. Is there something else you think we could see from them?
Well, I think just in particular with the Eagles, what I always worry about with their QB draw game is that they use Jason Kelce as a puller.
Yes.
So they'll use Jason Kelce, the center, which is pretty unique in like pin pull actions where the guard is going to, pin down the nose tackle, and then the center is going to come out and loop around in the pull. And Jason Kelce, I mean, Taylor, you can attest to this. Like, he's like a fullback. Like, the dude is just a freaking athlete. Like, he's super ridiculous, fast and explosive. So I'm actually surprised. Like, I guess you were talking about how the end kind of crashes inside, and that's probably what gets Hurts to be spooked out by following Kelce. Usually when he runs this type of draw, he follows 62, right? Yep. He's just going right behind 62.
And the running back's there too. He's got two lead blockers.
Yeah, and if he hits that quicker, then he might be in the end zone, right? So I think was a really nice touch by the Bears to have this end kind of slant across and maybe just deter him from going right behind Kelce. Because my thought was, and this is, I think, a even better version of it maybe, my thought is that maybe they would have Gottschall line up right over Kelce and just make him vertical right away. And that way there Kelce can't pull, right? So just essentially just put the big nose tackle right over the center, and just at the snap, he just goes vertical up the field right into him. And that way there Kelce can't pull. Because, I mean, there's some examples of Kelce pulling where it is dangerous. Like, he is a wrecking ball in the open field, and he runs like a tight end, like his brother, but he blocks like a center. So he's really difficult. I think he's the best center in the league. So he's tough. But I like this idea here of just trying to close that gap behind him instead. And that way there, it kind of gets Hurts to cut back, which is what the defense wants him to do.
And it's funny because they actually scored a touchdown against the Bears on a QB draw because the Bears, I'm not going to say they tried to get cute. I feel like that's a little rude. But they tried to just bring the house against Hurts and empty, and he was like, all right, bet. They literally just parted the Red Sea. Kelsey didn't even have to pull. They just let everybody get upfield, and it was maybe the easiest touchdown that Jalen Hurts has had this entire career. And another reason that playing man coverage is so scary against this team is because what they'll also do is when you play man-to-man, then it basically just leaves, depending on what your front is, sometimes it just leaves one linebacker in the box to account for Jalen Hurts. And because Kelsey is so mobile, one, you've got to deal with the possibility that Kelsey is just going to get out in the open field and block you or at least give Hurts, a little extra room to make these things work. And then we saw in the Super Bowl that even when, if you blitz and maybe Kelsey has to pick somebody up, Hurts can make you miss one-on-one, and then you got a bunch of guys because what they'll usually do, obviously didn't have the video here, but what they'll do sometimes is they'll have a stick route here. So the tight end, I don't even honestly know if the intention is to throw it. It's technically an RPO because what you'll see a lot of the time is this slot guy is going to be running a fade. This guy runs a stop. This guy runs a stop. And this guy's basically just clearing out. And then it puts you in a really bad place because your man coverage defenders are looking for routes. And then by the time they realize it's a run, Hurts has already broken one off on you. But yeah, I also really like that idea of just putting Devon Gottschall right in the middle like they do right here.
Yeah.
And not even letting him get out.
Right, because, so that's Morse, right? The center for the Bills. Yep. And, if he was on a pin pull right there, he's not going anywhere. Right. Gottschall's mitts are right in his chest, so he's not going to be able to pull if that's the case. But I agree with you that the danger of man coverage is certainly the fact that if it is a drop back pass or it is something out of empty or 3-by-1 or something like that, that Hurts' legs are now a sixth receiver, as Belichick would often call it. So that's dangerous. But that's where I think the cat and mouse game kind of comes in with Steve Belichick versus Brian Johnson, is anticipating when they're going to go into their drop back game versus their RPO stuff. RPO, you're not really as worried about Hurts, drawing or scrambling or something like that. With these formations, you're more worried about it. So maybe that's where they mix in zone looks, or that's where they mix in some different things that aren't just straight up man-to-man to keep it off balance. Or if they get burned by playing man, it's a draw or it's a go ball down the sideline, and the Eagles are just spamming those, right? Because they're in man, that's when you eventually adjust to it as well. So to an extent, that's where the chess match starts with Steve Belichick and with Brian Johnson. And I'm interested to see that one because Brian Johnson, he hasn't called a game in a while other than preseason. So maybe Steve Belichick will actually have an advantage there.
One nice thing about the Eagles scheme is that they do have a lot of things. They're good at having tosses, or at least last year. They were good at having different things to keep you off balance because a lot of their looks, they tend to do the same thing. So we'll see what it's like this year under Johnson. But I think that, like you say, the formation recognition is going to be huge to make sure they're at least a step ahead and don't get burned because they're caught off guard. It's the Patriots. I'm sure they'll be fine in that department. Next place I want to focus on is Hurts scrambling. Now, Hurts is a pocket passer. I actually looked it up. I think he had the best passer rating in the NFL when he was throwing from the pocket. When he scrambles and throws that way, because he's a big guy. I think he was squatting 500 pounds when he was in high school. The dude's jacked. But what happens when you build all that muscle is that some of your mobility, you can see it a little bit of it. So he's not really a Lamar Jackson type where he's getting out of the pocket and he's going to make all these crazy throws outside of structure that way. When Hurts breaks the pocket, he's trying to run. Now, that creates, and I know we've kind of been trying to ask players and coaches this when we do interviews, where's the balancing act there? Because you want to disrupt the pocket. You want to get, that interior pressure. With the Patriots, they love those games where they knife guys inside to create issues there. But sometimes it creates a difficulty where, but then you have defensive tackles who are looping around who can't run with Jalen Hurts. So where do you find a middle ground there? And I think I found it. It's with a spy. Now, this isn't breaking news. I'm sure people have been saying, Mac Wilson, Marte Mapu, spy, spy, spy. Of course. But I think this is a great example of how they can actually get it done. So we're going to see here. This is like what I mentioned, where you're going to see each of the edge defenders are going to crash inside because usually these offensive tackles, they're really trying to protect inside out. But if an edge rusher is going to go inside, a lot of the time there's going to be that vulnerability where they give up their inside shoulder to some degree, especially with a mobile guy like Hurts who can still move around, not really a statue like Mac Jones. And again, like I said, especially with the Colts, they've got a very, very athletic line. Forrest Buckner's obviously a monster. These guys are going to loop on the outside. Now, again, like I say, those bigger bodies, Hurts is very fast, so you don't want them to be the sole people who are responsible for keeping him in the pocket. But fundamentally, you're hoping that everyone's rush lanes are tight enough and disciplined enough that he's not going to have any easy escape hatches. But at the same time, one of the scariest things, and this is something that the Patriots did have struggles with at times last season, was they'd use these games and the middle of the pocket would be wide open. We actually saw this against the Colts last year with Sam Ehlinger. There were a few times where the Red Sea just parted because the Patriots tried a twist that didn't work. And then you got either guys in man coverage or in zone coverage who are dropping back and don't have enough depth to account for the QB run, and you're kind of screwed. This is where the spy comes in, so I'm going to run the play. You're going to see the line games, the crash like this. Now, DeForest Buckner is one of those freaks who's actually athletic enough to really scare you when he's out on the edge. So look at that. Oh, Jalen Hurts thinks I got an escape hatch. Look at all that grass. But nope, Zaire Franklin right there, keeping an eye on him. And he's going to make sure that Hurts isn't able to escape. And we actually saw something similar from the Patriots last season against Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is a similar kind of guy. We've seen that he can be dangerous when he scrambles. Like when he uses his legs, he's still a good athlete. But as Devin McCourty knows very well, when Zach Wilson gets outside of the pocket, he specifically gets kind of turnover happy. So the Patriots were kind of trying to find a blend of, okay, let's try to get this guy uncomfortable in the pocket, make him skittish, but we also don't want him to escape. So it's basically it is the exact same front. You got Mac Wilson mugging over the center, and then you got a forward down front outside of that. We're going to see the same thing, a twist where Daniel Ekuale is going to really try to get outside. We're going to see Josh Uche, which I think we're going to see a lot of, especially this week. He crashes inside as one of their best pass rushers. Now, on this side, it's a little more obscure. Really, Matt Judon is kind of going to bull rush and take an inside track, and then Bentley's going to make sure to protect that outside. But Mac Wilson's QB spy responsibility is going to be key in making sure that Wilson isn't able to find an escape hatch. So play the whole clip. See the twist. Ekuale, as he is wont to do, gets good pressure knifing in. Josh Uche, now this is one where it might kind of scare you because, oh no, maybe he's going to try to escape outside. But again, Ekuale does a good job getting enough depth that there isn't an outside escape hatch. He wants to run in the middle, similar kind of thing where you get this space here. Wilson's there, steps up, takes his brother Wilson's head off. Let's see it one more time. I'll run that one more time. And Evan, what are your thoughts on this tactic? And do you think there's anything else that we could see from the Patriots to try to contain Hurts as a scrambler?
Yeah, no, this is exactly what I had in mind in like obvious passing situations. I think this is probably like one robber, right? Adrian Phillips looks like he's going into the robber. Mm-hmm. So this is exactly what I had in mind was this 5-0 rush package with Mac Wilson, or I would like, no offense to Mac Wilson, Marty Mapu to be in this role eventually. But I don't know if that's going to happen in week one against the defending NFC champs. Like, we'll see. But Marty Mapu in this role, Mac Wilson in this role as the spy. I think the two things that I like what the Patriots tend to do when they tee off and then use a spy like this is they try to force the quarterback to a specific outlet, right? Like they want to control where he's going to leave the pocket if he's going to leave. So that gives Mac Wilson a little bit of a head start as to where he's going to end up escaping. So it's not like Mac Wilson's scanning from tackle to tackle trying to find him, right? So like we know that we're going to force pressure to his arm side, and he's probably going to try to escape either through the middle or to his weak side or his non-arm side. And that way there, Mac Wilson kind of is already in position. I think where you run into issues when you use a spy is when you just have all four guys get up the field and tee off, and now all of a sudden the spy is just one-on-one in space with the quarterback. Like you don't want that either. So by funneling him to a certain spot, this time I think they're mostly funneling him right up the middle, it looks like, and just right into Mac Wilson's spy. A lot of the times what we'll see, and I think this was depend on statistically, where Jalen Hurts is better. But a lot of the times a righty quarterback, they'll force him out left, right? Because then he has to make the throw across his body. And most quarterbacks that aren't named Patrick Mahomes have a tough time doing that. So if you can go to force him to his non-arm side to his left or force him right up the middle, but just as long as Mack Wilson has a beat on where he's going before he goes, that allows the spy to be a whole lot more effective, because you don't want Mack Wilson to have to chase him around all game long. Like, that's not going to work either.
And one thing also, I think it's gonna they mix what they do. Like, sometimes the spy is really more of a hole defender, and that's where they get in trouble sometimes when they play man coverage, like it happened. Lamar Jackson really stayed in the pocket. I think he had like one scramble. Really, this was an issue with Justin Fields at times, where this guy will actually be reading the quarterback, but also he'll have the responsibility to disrupt crossing routes. And that's where they really get into trouble, because all it takes is that tick for Mack Wilson to try to, jam somebody in the middle. His eyes move a little bit because he's trying to diagnose the play, and then the quarterback gets out and runs. I don't have it here, but that's one of the things I was really worried about. But here you can see there's no other responsibility. I think Adrian Phillips here actually is the back, and because he stays in to protect, he's able to just kind of play the middle of the field.
Might fall off the back,
Yeah, but that's one thing I'll be watching to see if they do. If they use like this, a true spy where he's just like up there, I don't have any other job, I'm just trying to make sure this guy doesn't get out. Or if they're going to experiment with the one hole and basically say, okay, yeah, I have the quarterback, but also I'm trying to get involved with the passing game as well to make sure that there's no easy dump-offs.
Yeah, I think that this is a really good strategy, and I think this is just what we were going back to with all the early down stuff. This Eagles offense is all about being on schedule. If they're ahead of the chains and they're in manageable down and distances, you're screwed. Like, you can't, there's too much to stop. But if you can get them into 3rd and 8, if you can get them into 3rd and 9, and then you can unlock the 5-0 rush package, and then you can use a spy and play rat or play one or whatever, then you're able to kind of do some things that might give them some problems. So when you watch their film, like, they go on these drives, 8, 9, 10 play drives where they never touch 3rd down, right? Like, they just are first down 6 yards, second down 7 yards, first down 5 yards, right? And they just go right down the field like that. And that's why I get so worried about the option package, because you can't get into that sort of game script because you're never going to get them off the field. If they're in 3rd and manageable, they're almost impossible to get off the field. And I don't want to see the Patriots defense on the field for 13, 14, 15 play drives where the Eagles are just taking your will from you, and just running it down your throat or RPOing it down your throat. And that can be really problematic. So I love the idea of trying to get them into some longer down distances and then trying to use a spy to allow Judon and Uche and Aquale and Barmore, whoever, Keon White, like, go ahead and try to create some negative plays, because that's the other thing. They don't go backwards very often, the Eagles, because their offensive line is so good. So if you're going to get them to go backwards at all, it's going to be in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, like those types of situations.
Last thing I'll ask you. You can tell me if you want me to keep this up, if you want like a diagram or something. Because I know that we've talked at times about Matt Judon moving around the formation. Yeah. He's someone who's usually rushing off the offense's right side, defense's left. But Lane Johnson's on the right side. And I think that Bill Belichick knows damn well that Lane Johnson, I think, he hasn't given up a sack since I was born or something like that. So, yeah, they're not going to have a lot of success against them. And it's basically wasting your best pass rusher. Like, yes, Matt Judon is good. Lane Johnson is going into the Hall of Fame. Do you think and I think Honest NFL, great Twitter account, I believe he used to scout for the Eagles, has a lot of knowledge on the Eagles and their scheme. Yeah, he had some thoughts on how they might defend the Eagles this week. Do you think we'll see Matt Judon actually move around, maybe line up over the guard? I know he told us earlier this summer that that's something he's been working on, kind of in like more of a high tower Kyle Van Noy role where he literally can line up anywhere on the defensive front.
I would love to see that. That's sort of been the next like maturation of Matthew Judon that I've been waiting for. And he's such a great player and he does what he does so well out on the edge. But I would love to see them allow him to try to do a little bit more of that on 3rd down, over the center, over the guard, like you just said, like they used to do with Hightower. And if this is the type of game where they're really worried about the edges containing and they don't want to allow Hurts out of the pocket, off the edge and allow him to extend plays moving to his right, especially, then I could see them allowing the interior guys to tee off a little bit more and then using that spy as that next layer if he does try to escape through the middle of the pocket. So I like that idea. I've always liked the idea of trying to move him inside. I just don't know how comfortable he's been with it. So if he's working more on it this offseason, and I assume in practices that are close to us, because we haven't seen him do it much in the training camp practices, but maybe that's something that he's working on a little bit more now.
Buddy, this has been a ton of fun. We're going to have to do this again. The people demand it. Right now, I'm giving you the platform. Again, everyone knows who you are. But just in case they don't, remind them where they can find you and let us know what great content you got dropping soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's patriots.com is where all the written content is. And I'll have another more in-depth game plan piece that I publish every single week leading into every single game. There's the first one, obviously, for the season this week, which is exciting. And that'll have more Jalen Hurts breakdown, how they're going to stop him. And then also some thoughts on the Patriots offense as well. So a lot more schematic X's and O's coming in that piece along these same lines. And as I got to plug the pod, the old pod, Patriots Beat still going on, still kicking with Alex Barth, but Patriots Catch 22 on patriots.com is our new podcast with Alex and I. We're live tomorrow at 2:00 from 2 to 4. So come join us. You can call in, you can email in. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you all for tuning in. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.